everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex, and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Keith Giffen Day, so we're looking at his next issue that I own of The Defenders, his run in the 70s. This is issue number 52, cover dated October 1977. Going to start off with the cover once again, not drawn by Keith Giffen. He's not, as kind of a marquee name, obviously starting off his career in the 70s, kind of a new artist, right? So they're still doing the old school kind of thing where, a more veteran, more renowned artist is doing the cover. So I was pretty sure this was Gil Kane, and I looked it up just to make sure. It sure is, inked by Frank Giacoia. I think that's how you're supposed to say that. Gil Kane, pretty solid artist overall. I noticed his particular brand of hatching. That's pretty distinctive to his style, and also his very kind of fairly accurate depiction of muscles and anatomy and stuff. He kind of prides himself on that. And his famous looking up at someone shot, right, from when you see the under his nose. I mean, he kind of looks like that, the way he had his nose job done. It's like it's his favorite angle or something to draw. Or maybe because it's really hard to do and he mastered it, and he just used it a lot. And it is a very hard angle to draw a face from. Probably the hardest, because all the lines all of a sudden curve in the other direction. Anyways, not here for a drawing tutorial just yet. So yeah, just pretty solid cover that's telling us what's going to be going on. Some conflict between the Hulk and Namor. So without further ado, let's have a look inside. Let's read the blurb because it's always fun. It's the Hulk versus Submariner, and the dynamic defenders are caught in the middle. Okay, pretty run-of-the-mill stuff there. So credits real quick. David Kraft, writer. Keith Giffen, Sheik Stone, artist. So I'm assuming Sheik Stone is either finishing over layouts or just inking, but I'll talk about it throughout this issue. It seems like there's a bit of both kind of going on here. I still find, when I saw Sheik Stone's name, I was kind of surprised looking at the splash. I'm like, doesn't look quite as much like Kirby as the stuff in the last few issues did, at least the ones before Klaus Janson, especially with Mike Royer inking. He really brought out the Kirby in that. So I was a little bit surprised here, where we do have a pretty classic, I would say, Kirby type composition, but the aesthetic really is more 70s, Marvel style. So the only kind of hint of Kirby that's still kind of apparent is over here, the squiggly shadows coming off of Namor. Kind of funny that you could see the little wings. Actually, it's a little specific for shadow, or Kirby style shadow, but that's a funny little detail I kind of liked. But yeah, it just didn't feel as Kirby as before. And the gist of the story here, Namor needs help. Atlantis is in trouble. He's coming to Earth to recruit help. And the Hulk is kind of the first person he comes upon. So again, looking at these first 3 pages, I was just slightly disappointed with the lack of Kirby aesthetic, right? As I go through, there's still examples. This is pretty Kirby all around. These 2 cops here, the faces, the compositions, but the aesthetic was definitely different. Not that it's bad per se, but it's not quite as Kirby as I would like. Also the depiction of the Hulk throughout this issue is a little spotty, where a lot of times he's kind of the prototypical Kirby style, Frankenstein-y kind of Hulk. And then, in later shots in the inking, probably the inking, it ends up kind of looking more like just 70s Hulk, right? And yeah, so these pages, just disappointing in that they're not quite as Kirby as maybe I would have liked. And I'm making a weird parallel here, but looking at this, it kind of reminds me of Rick Veitch a little bit, right? I find there's a similarity there. And of course, the common element is that both artists, Keith Giffen, Rick Veitch, are huge fans of Jack Kirby. So that makes a lot of sense. But, where eventually they kind of pull away from that a bit more and start to assert their own style, Rick Veitch kind of does the same thing, right? There's always a little bit that's left in there. But I kind of see a parallel here with Rick Veitch art. So again, kind of disappointed. Oh, sorry. And just so for the plot, the conflict is pretty thin. Hulk kind of, hears about Namor needing help. He sees the humans around him, thinks maybe they're trying to hurt Namor or get in his way. So he jumps down. Hulk came to help friend Fishman. I like that. It's hilarious that he calls him a Fishman. And, Namor kind of just brushes him aside and, Hulk, I'm sorry, but I have no time for your childishness, nor have I need of your help. Stand aside. And then that's all it basically need to set off the plot here. So the A story, Namor and the Hulk basically fighting throughout this issue. So again, yeah, the disappointment of not seeing Kirby type stuff, and then to turn to this almost splash page and see this, I was like, okay, this is kind of more what I was expecting. Maybe I'm wrong about this issue, because both these pages, again, compared to the first three, feel a lot more Kirby overall, especially in their background designs. I've talked about this before, the Kirby Steranko kind of fusion going on there that I think is awesome. And I'll profess again to loving a lot of 70s comics. I just feel like we're really pushing the boundaries, you know, the cosmic stuff and the sci-fi aspect of superheroes. The aesthetic all throughout the 70s, I just really enjoy, starting with, like, you know, this is the late 60s, but 2001 Space Odyssey, and then going into Clockwork Orange and that kind of stuff, movie-wise anyways, and the Andromeda Strain, even Logan's Run, I think looks pretty cool. It's a fun movie. The older I get, the more I enjoy looking at old 60s and 70s movies, as opposed to when I was a kid and I just would not even consider looking at those. With the way movies are produced today, and they're kind of mostly, anyways, the kind of stuff I'm into tend to be cold and CGI driven and stuff. I really, really like practical effects, even if they're a little janky sometimes. But anyways, yeah, so just love the spread here. I love kind of her design. These characters' cloaks are interesting, but she's got the added bit of... I have to assume... Okay, I'm just going to throw this in there. I see this character here, and obviously I'm reviewing Quasar on Friday by Greg Capullo, and I'm assuming that's the character who's in there, because I know that the next issue of Defenders 53 actually premieres The Presence. I was wondering in my Quasar reviews, if that character was a creation of Greg Capullo, or if it was, you know, an older character created at some point and that he was using in Quasar. Well, I got my answer looking up issue 53 of Defenders, because I don't actually own it, but I was just curious if Keith Giffen was doing anything on it, and he's sharing the art duties with a bunch of other guys. So that's kind of where it starts to trail off to Keith Giffen. There's 2 more issues, and I just don't want to get them because they have other artists involved, and it's, you know, not really conducive to what I'm doing with the Keith Giffen reviews. But just to say that the character appearing in Quasar, The Presence, actually appears in Defenders 53, and I feel as if he's probably, like, that's probably his first appearance. I didn't check that for sure when I looked it up, but I feel like that's what it is. So kind of weird kind of synergy between my reviews there. This character appearing in Quasar with The Presence, now appearing in Defenders 53, answering my question. So definitely a Kirby influenced creation by, I'm going to assume, maybe Keith Giffen designed him, but I'm not quite sure on that. Anyone knows, let me know in the comments. Yes, the 70s ads. And then I was really, really happy to see this full splash page here, because, I mean, you know, it is as close to Kirby clonage as you can get, I think. You know, I can still see little things that maybe Kirby wouldn't do, but man, do I just love this whole style of this image. The guy kind of, it's a computer, is it an organ, is it a piano? Like, all of this stuff is just everything I love about Kirby in the 70s. And none of this would be possible, this whole look here, I think, if, you know, in the early 70s, and I'm reviewing these as well, if Kirby himself hadn't done the New Gods, right? This is definitely, there's a bit of Marvel influence for sure, that stuff he was doing in the late 60s, but a lot of this is very much New Gods inspired, right? Keith Giffen, Jim Starlin, all kind of did that cosmic stuff after Jack Kirby did New Gods. No one gives him a lot of credit for that stuff, but I think a lot of it came from the inspiration from New Gods. Even though it was canceled, they kind of, Keith Giffen and Jim Starlin, other artists of creating kind of more cosmic type, you know, stories, definitely took inspiration from Kirby. I love all these designs back here. Again, so 70s, so surrealist. Just the cloaks, the mystery people, all the whole aesthetic of these 2 pages to me is just awesome. It's more of the stuff I should be putting in my comics. Or at least in the next comics I do soon. So we're back to the Hulk, and again, pretty good kind of Jack Kirby pastiche. You know, the awkward foreshortening that's still kind of cool going on here. And then here I just find, again, in the inking, so this kind of is more Kirby-ish. It almost veers into Ditko here in a weird way. How the hatching is done and the representation, these force lines, for lack of a better term right now. Just to me, this whole, even the anatomy and stuff and the positioning of this character, Namor, just feels more like Ditko all of a sudden, which is odd, but I don't hate it. Very, very well drawn image. So now we're on to our C story with the side characters. I'm not going to say too much about this. It's clearly just an extra page. Well, one page devoted to them just to make sure we don't forget what they're doing. Seem to be on some sort of date or just walking around, and something happens, and that's probably going to be, they're talking about the ringer. So attaching it to last issue's plot. But anyways, visually, there's just one interesting thing here that I like to point out is, the shadows of each character, the classic comic trope of it being their superhero alter ego. Always kind of a cool visual trope that people use. So yeah, just a lot more fighting between Namor and Hulk. That's pretty much most of the issue as it concerns those two characters. Here, there's a bit of miscoloring, so like it almost makes the Hulk look like he's got no teeth, but like a frog mouth. So he could be the frog or something. I don't know. Just very frog-like here. And I love this shot here of Namor all of a sudden, just turning almost to pure energy or powering up or something. He's doing a Dragon Ball thing before Dragon Ball was a thing. And that just looks great. Obviously very inspired by Kirby, but just so well done. Really, really cool with all the Kirby crackle. And then an ad. That's a cool depiction of the Human Torch. Pretty cool. Slightly cartoony or cartoonier. And then boom. I really like this panel because it harkens back to FF number 6. Anyone remember that issue? I have far more strength than mere strength. Excuse me, let me start that again. I have far more than mere strength at my regal command, Hulk. For like certain of the creatures that inhabit my kingdom, I can transmit electric current through my body and direct it against an opponent. So like an eel, right? Electric eel. So they really went far back. At least in 1977, that was already like probably 16 years ago when that issue was published, 15, 16 years ago. And that's a cool little fact to bring up, I think. Just fun. The shot of the Hulk in that kind of form as well. He's kind of absorbing the power, right? Is pretty cool as well. Good use of Kirby crackle all throughout. All right, bit of side story with, is her name Hellcat? I don't remember for sure. And he's Nighthawk. And again, these are the pages where I feel is just not much Kirby going on. Funny depiction of Spider-Man here in that, he's drawn him the Kirby proportions, the wider heads, I guess, and he looks stockier, but the mask itself is pretty Ditko. More ads. And then the last sequence of this issue that we're going to be is it? Oh, I might be mistaken on that. Nope. Sorry, I thought it was. So just seeing what's going on with Valkyrie here. This shady kind of hipster professor, I kind of like his look. And this long-faced guy is here again, and yeah, not really interested in that. Not the most interesting pages. Just getting a lot of story across, lots of small panels and dialogue and talking. Do like this little collage bit here. I don't know what they're watching and who's this masked guy here, so I'm kind of just intrigued most by all of this as to who this is and where that's from. The Crimson Avenger or something, but this is a Marvel book, so gotta assume it's an old Marvel character. Anyone knows who that might be, let me know in the comments. Yeah, so Star-Lord introduced in the 70s, right? So again, the 70s are very good for kind of sci-fi, futuristic, slightly surrealist stuff. There was a whole kind of movement of that in the 70s, wasn't there? That's why I like art in that period so much. Movies, painting, comic books. So one last bit with the Hulk and Namor. We're finally, Namor's able to get his message across that he needs help. We get a cool kind of shot of Atlantis here, very Kirby inspired. Again, backgrounds, love all that design stuff. And that pretty much does it for this issue. And again, basically the last issue I'm going to cover with Giffen on Defenders. As issue 53 and 54, he does a little bit, but maybe that's part of the whole history of Keith Giffen that I basically remember from an interview I read way back in the day in Wizard Magazine with him, where he was saying, early on in his career, he wasn't quite as dependable as he should have been, and that caused him problems, where he was eventually able to surmount those problems, come back and do some good work. But that's, probably around this period of time, and what led to those 2 issues where he's being helped out by other people. Again, they're not full issues drawn by Giffen, so I don't really feel the need to buy them. Last one we're going to be reviewing is 52. Next week we'll have something new with Giffen. Not going to say right away what it is. I would love to have some Legion stuff. I just haven't taken the time to look it up and see if I can get it some good prices. Last time I went at the comic book shop, I completely forgot to look those up. So I'll start to plan a little bit more on that and continue on with the Giffen stuff that I have. because I do have a bunch of other stuff, but come back to it at some point once I have the Legion run, because I've heard a lot of good things about it and I would like to read it. And again, mostly I'll try to focus on this issues. I think there's a bunch of issues that he writes and draws, and that's kind of probably what I'll focus on. All right, so that's going to be it for today, guys. If you're still watching and you're subscribed, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It really helps the channel out, helps us grow, helps us attain our goal of 500 subs as soon as possible. It's our next kind of our first actual kind of milestone on this humble channel. And once we get there, YouTube starts to help us out a little bit and helps spread the word about big baby reviews, and helps get us out there to other people who hopefully would be interested in comic books and the kind of reviews we provide here. So everyone out there, thanks again for watching and have yourselves an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KIngCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Like! Subscribe!